Hello, everybody. I think
Hello.
so. I'm very happy to welcome everyone tonight. We have 3 astronauts with us tonight. So I'll first say hi to everyone, and I'll introduce you all individually. So thank you for joining me today. First, I'll introduce Ron Garan, who is calling from Houston.
Hello, good day.
So Ron is an active NASA astronaut since 2000. He was originally a fighter pilot in the US Air Force, and he has flown into space twice, in 2008 and in 2011. And he spent close to 6 months in orbit. And he's also conducted a lot of spacewalks, 33 hours, more or less. And he was also an aquanaut. And he spent 18 days in an underwater research laboratory in 2006. Ron Garan is also the founder of the Mana Energy Foundation, and he participates in the Fragile Oasis initiative. Starting this week, that's breaking news, he will be joining the United States Agency for International Development, where he will help apply space technology to the challenges facing the developing world.
Good to be here.
Then we have Michael Lopez-Alegría.
Hello.
So he's actually also calling from Houston, right next to Ron. So he's a Spanish.
We're in the same room.
He's a Spanish-American astronaut.
I'm supposed to know that we're in this.
Well, it's very well hidden. You don't
Same
have
room.
background at all. So Michael Lopez-Alegría has flown 3 times on the space shuttle, and he's known for having performed 10 spacewalks in his career, presently holding the second longest all-time EVA duration record and having the longest space flight of any American. That's 215 days. This time was spent in 2006, from September 2006 to April 2007. He's actually also an aquanaut and participated in the first underwater mission of the NASA NEMO facility in 2001. He actually retired from NASA exactly 1 year ago and became the president of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation in Washington. So thank you to be here.
My pleasure.
And last but not least, we have Jean-François Clervoy.
Hello.
So he's calling from Paris, France. He's an active European astronaut, still selected by France in 1985, and joined the ESA Astronaut Corps in 1992. He flew in space 3 times aboard the shuttle in the 90s, and was responsible, among other things, for rendezvous and docking maneuvers with the Mir space station and with the Hubble Space Telescope, as well as operating the robotic arm. He's also now president of Novespace, a company that provides zero-G parabolic flights for science and commercial passengers starting this year in Europe aboard an Airbus A300. So thank you to you to join us tonight.
Pleasure to be with you all.
So we're here tonight to talk about the overview effect, or this perspective that that only astronauts until now have gotten when flying into space and looking back at our planet Earth. There's a Wikipedia definition of the overview effect, and that is a cognitive shift in awareness reported by some astronauts and cosmonauts during spaceflight, often while viewing the Earth from orbit or from the lunar surface. So I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think this is one of the drives for commercial spaceflight also. We just lost Ron. But I'll start with a question to all 3 of you. Although we just lost Ron, I hope he'll be back in a second.
Yeah.
So my first question to all of you is, you have all flown in space several times. But do you remember the first time you flew? And could you briefly describe the view as you had it from the Earth, from space, and the feeling you got when you saw it for the first time? So, Mike.
Jean-François, since you flew before I did, why don't you answer first, and then I'll go after you.
Okay, so it was in the 3rd of November 1994. We launched midday, and about 20 minutes after takeoff, we were flying over Europe. The terminator separating the day part and the night part of the Earth was just there on the east side of France. And this is when I got to take off to take off my seat. And the first view I had of the Earth when I went on the flight deck was huge storms over Germany. So I could still see part of France illuminated by the sun, but I could see very massive clouds over 100,000 kilometer wide zone illuminated from inside by lightnings. And it struck me because I realized the Earth has its own life, and that was so big. I mean, that was covering such a large surface over Europe that I realized that I was better in my spaceship than under those thunderstorms. It was amazing, and just 1 hour and a half later, we flew over again that place. And when you see lightnings from space on the night side of the Earth, you realize there is power there. But you see a lot of yellow lights, but these are just very calm lights. These are artificial lights from a human life. Very vivid memory of it.
Thank you. So Ron, welcome back. We lost you there for a second.
Good to be back.
So I'll let Michael answer.
Well, my experience was in September of 1995, and my memory isn't quite as good as Jean-François'. I can't tell you exactly the date, but I can tell you that as a flight engineer during the ascent portion of the mission, I was seated on the flight deck looking forward, but one of the tasks that we had to do almost immediately was to photograph the external tank as it separated from the space shuttle. And we flew what effectively ended up being sort of above and ahead of the tank. And so the Earth was behind us as we were taking these pictures. And it's pretty spectacular. It wasn't my primary responsibility. I was still focusing on the flight deck. So I saw one view of the Earth out the front windows, and then a different view of the Earth out the rear and overhead windows. And of course, the shuttle flies in general upside down, so the payload bay is pointed toward the center of the Earth. And the view feels a little bit distorted. Of course, that's the way you train, but it's still a bit odd to be sort of floating upside down, looking at the place where everything that you know in your life has all occurred, sort of through the top of your head. But I'd have to echo Jean-François' comments about how it's a truly magical experience, and even after having been in orbit for over 7 months, it's something you never ever get tired of. Fantastic.
Thank you. So Ron, I don't think you heard the question, but
I did not. No. So if you could repeat it.
So the question is that you've flown in space several times, but do you remember the first time you went? And could you describe the view, the first time you viewed the Earth from outside, and the feeling you got when you saw that?
Yeah, you said up front that the Wikipedia definition of the overview effect was a cognitive shift, and I disagree with that a little bit, because I think everybody has an understanding that we all are riding on through the universe together on the spaceship that we call Earth, that we're all living on this planet together, we share the same ecosystem. I think people understand that intellectually. So I think it's more of an emotional shift than a cognitive shift. And I think the first time looking at the planet from space, it's breathtaking, and but it wasn't a surprise to me. It was about what I expected, and especially now with the photography equipment that we have and the time lapse photography that's coming back. It really does a very good job of capturing what it looks like. It's not exact, but I mean, it's you're not floating. That's part of the experience as well. But I think it's more of just an emotional experience to feel that you are detached from the only home that you've ever known, and to be outside of it, basically looking down on it, and as Mike said, looking at in a very small part of the frame of view, this everything you've ever known and all of human history is all happened in the same spot. So to me, it was more of an emotional shift than a cognitive shift.
Thank you. Actually, it touches on a question I was going to ask later, but I should ask it now. You talked about the photos that we took of Earth from space, and that now we see all the time, and it's not as intellectually surprising when you see it, I guess, in real. So that was my question. I think you partly answered, but maybe Michael and Jean-François can answer too. Was it a surprise, even though you were prepared for it? You knew what you were going to see. You prepare a lot for a space flight, and you've seen all these pictures. But was it a surprise anyway?
Yes, it was a surprise. I usually say that I had very little surprises, even my first space flight, because you talk to people who have flown a lot before, and you picture in your mind the way it's going to be doing ascent, entry in space. And there are only 2 or 3 things that surprise me really in space, and one of them is the view of the Earth with your own eyes. I had seen a lot of IMAX movies, very widescreen movies made by astronauts in space, but which is probably what takes you the closest to what it is to be in space yourself. But when you see with your own eyes, you pinch your colleague and you say to each other, we are really here, this is us, and the fact the sky is black in daylight. You've seen pictures of the Earth on paper, but when you see with your own eyes this blackness, you don't see stars. If you don't switch off all the lights in the cockpit, you don't see stars. It's just deep black, and this marble there. This is the first time in our lives that the eyes focus at a distance of about 400 kilometers. It has never happened before in your life. And the fact we go around very fast, you see oceans, mountains, deserts, continents, forests, islands, alternating views very fast. You don't feel you're going fast because you don't hear engines. You have the feeling the Earth is a marble, spinning in front of your eyes. And on my first flight, we were close to the winter time. And 45 minutes you fly above the North Hemisphere, where it's winter colors, and the next 45 minutes it's summer colors on the South Hemisphere. And the fact we see sunsets, sunrises every 5 minutes, I mean, it's alive. When you see pictures or movies, you see only short periods, but when you stare at the window for 1, 2, 3 orbits in a row, it's really different. It is really surprising, and it's very emotional, like Ron said. And Mike probably remembers, a few days after we arrived in Houston, we had like a private meeting with a senior astronaut who told us, don't be surprised if you feel tears in your eyes due to the emotion of being in space. And this is what I felt. I had tears in my eyes just watching the Earth. And I was not alone. We were several of us, watching the Earth. So it's a surprise. It's moving. And I think for most astronauts, it's probably the most strong memory of our all space flights, the Earth.
Thank you. Michael, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'd sort of combine the responses of my colleagues in this way. I think what Jean-François says is true. It is a surprise, but it's not a surprise in a cognitive sense. It's a surprise in an emotional sense. I mean, as he said, you see pictures, you talk to people who've been there, there's nothing sort of from an engineering standpoint out of the ordinary from what you're seeing. You know how high you are, you know how fast you're going. If you put two and two together, you sort of know what to expect when you look out the window. But the fact is that you're really doing it, and it's a place that very few have had the privilege of visiting, and that is what's so amazing about it. Is you say, well, if somebody were in space, this is probably what it would look like, but then you realize, hey, I'm in space. And the view of the Earth is one of those things, and I think microgravity is something else. I mean, we all experience short periods of zero-G during our training on parabolic flights, but they're 20 seconds long. And to have it last days and days and literally months, as long as you're up there, you never get tired of that. I mean, it never stops to be sort of amazing when you let go of a pencil and it just floats in front of your eye. Or you put a tool somewhere and expect it to be there when you go back for it, and it's invariably not. So those kinds of things shouldn't be cognitively surprising, but emotionally they are.
Jean-François hit on something that I think was a surprise for me when he was talking about how things change over many orbits, and that's certainly true. But and Mike, I'm sure, has a similar view. Is when you look at the Earth for weeks and months at a time from space, and you see the seasons change and the ice break up and the fall colors in different parts, march north or march south, depending on which hemisphere you're in, and so you see all these things that become home. When you become familiar with what the geography is and what different areas are, and then you see the auroras and as Jean-François said, the sunsets sun rises every 45 minutes. It really makes you feel like we have this wonderful, amazing gift that we've been all giving, and it's just fills you with this sense that it's something that needs to be protected. It's something that we need to take care of, and it really kind of redefines the word home for me. And like when I landed in Kazakhstan, and the capsule was on the ground and was tipped on its side, and I had right out my window, I had some grass because I was on the bottom of the tilt there. I remember looking out the window and seeing rocks and dirt and grass and thinking, I'm home. This is wonderful. And even home for me at that point, was Kazakhstan. It was the Earth. It was really a perspective shift that was over a period of time. So the surprise, I think, for me was this, epiphany in slow motion, this change in perspective over time of watching the Earth become this living, breathing organism that was changing right in front of me.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I guess just to close this little topic, I'll quote Bill Anders, who flew on Apollo 8 and said, "We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth." And I think that quite summarizes it. And I think for the Apollo astronauts it was even more, because they didn't have so many pictures of the Earth. So now I'll just like to move on to what you did after you were astronauts. You still are. Ron, you're now working a lot to help other communities, or with the Mana Energy Foundation, Fragile Oasis, USAID. Jean-François, you're working with Novespace to make zero-G flights available for science, but also for commercial passengers. And Michael, you're working for the Commercial Space Flights Federation, also with companies that aim at making private space flight available. So, do you think that all these paths you've taken were influenced by your experience in space and this perspective you got? And do you also think that if more and more people get to fly into space thanks to these private initiatives, so not as professional astronauts but for their own interest, if more and more politicians or decision makers, influential people generally, get to fly and get this perspective, do you think this will change the way decisions are made on Earth?
One can only hope so, right? I remember after my first flight, which was 256 orbits of the Earth, I thought, you could probably fly the head of state of every country and have a few orbits left over for one orbit, and have a few orbits left over, and that would probably influence the way the world worked in a very positive way. Now, I think that effect can only be multiplied by having, not 200, but 2,000 and 20,000 and 200,000 people someday have the privilege of seeing the view that we did. And even if it only affects a fraction of them the way it has affected us, I think the world will be a better place.
Yes, Jean-François?
Yeah, Annelie, so weightlessness, like Mike said, is very strange and very unique environment. And I knew well weightlessness before going to space because I had started the first parabolic flight program in Europe before my first space flight. But if you give me the choice, if you tell me next time you go to space, you choose. You either have weightlessness, but you don't have the view of the Earth, or you have the view of the Earth, but you don't have weightlessness. I would choose to keep the view of the Earth and stay weighing something. Weightlessness is really fun. It's playful. It's very good for science in all fields of science. But I have been very moved by the view of the Earth. And, when you look at the Earth, although I haven't flown as long as my colleagues, and I am jealous because I'm sure they know the Earth by heart visually. You can show them any picture of any place on Earth. They will tell you where it is and what's the name because they've seen it so much. And I'm jealous of this, including for auroras, because my dream before my first flight was to see auroras. And I was lucky to be on an orbit that was 57 degrees inclination above the equator plane, which is the maximum ever in astronautics so far. But I saw only one aurora on the South Pole very far away, but I have colleagues who have flown through them. And I know it's a very spectacular thing. But when you look at the Earth, eventually, even after just a few days, you fall in love with your planet. You feel it's a spaceship. It is finite, it is round, it is beautiful. And that's why, of course, I am chairman of Novespace, but because I know this business. I know weightlessness, I know what it is, I know how to help scientists. But it is not my dream every day, although I like to fly as much as I can. But I would like to see the Earth from space, every day if I could. And I don't know any astronaut who is not involved one way or the other in the protection of the Earth. I personally patron an association protecting the ocean. I can show you here the logo. It's called Temana Ote Moana. It's Tahitian. It means the spirit of the ocean. When you look at the Earth from space, you realize it's a living planet, and the ocean is the life support system of that spaceship. It is the main source of oxygen, the main absorber of carbon dioxide. It regulates the temperature. It regulates the water cycle on the Earth. And I think when you come back from space after seeing the Earth as beautiful as it is, as a spaceship, housing life, including us, we want to do something to help. And we love the planet. We want to help to protect. We want to help pass the messages that we need to care. We need to pay attention. We need to manage resources like we do on our own spaceship. You can ask Mike and Ron, on board the space station or the space shuttle, we care about the amount of oxygen, of water, of electricity we consume every day. And we feel we need to do the same. Everybody on Earth, we are all crew members of the same spaceship Earth.
Yeah, just jump in there and agree with Jean-François and Mike. I think when I launched into space, I didn't. When I was in space for the first time, I didn't have this, whole change of perspective. I realized that we need to protect the planet. I realized that we have a responsibility to leave this place a little bit better than we found it. But I think going to space really reinforced that view. But one of the things that did happen to me from my time living in space is, looking at our beautiful planet, as we've heard, our indescribably beautiful planet, and it actually fills you with a little bit of sadness when you think about the contradiction between the beauty of our planet and life on our planet for a significant portion of the people that live here. And we would hear about natural disasters or human-made disasters, conflicts, and we'd fly right over those locations and look down at this beautiful spot, this beautiful place on Earth and realize that all the suffering that was happening there, and it fills you with this sense of injustice, of this sense of it doesn't need to be this way. And one of the things that I did, and one of the reasons why I'm transferring over to USAID on a rotation, is thinking about why we still have so many problems, because I believe that we have ample resources, we have ample technology to solve the problems that we face. So why do so many still exist? And I think the primary reason for that is our inability to work together, our inability to collaborate, our inability to set aside our differences and work together. We often say you can't see any borders from space. That's not true. You can see borders from space. And what those borders are really man-made scars on a beautiful paradise that we've been given, and they're basically signs of, in some cases, of a lack of collaboration. Visual signs that you could even see from space. And so I think it's very obvious when viewed from that perspective, as Mike said, the more people that can see that, I think the better off that we're all going to be. And the more people who can experience that and experience the interconnectedness, firsthand, that is the reality of where we all live and the home that we live on.
Thank you. So we touched a little bit on private spaceflight and how this could change maybe life on Earth for the better if more people get to see this. Realistically, these days, people will not get to go to orbit in the first few years, at least. Most initiatives that are closest to market are suborbital or high-altitude balloon flights in Zero to Infinity's case. So do you think that these kinds of flights that don't have the orbital perspective, as you talked about, that you get to see the whole Earth, but you do get to see the black sky that Jean-François referred to, and you do get to see the thin layer of the atmosphere. Actually, I'll show you a picture. I think I can do screen share. So, can you see this picture?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a picture that we took from a high altitude balloon in November 2012. So very recently. Do you think that having this view, even for a short period of time, like 2-3 hours in the case of a balloon flight, would that be enough to give this overview effect, even to start getting this emotional shift? As we agreed, it wasn't a cognitive one.
I think it's a question of degree. To be quite honest, I think you get quite a bit more of that effect on an orbital flight for a number of reasons. We've talked about seeing the different parts of the Earth, and especially as it migrates over time, the characteristics are different. However, I do think that there will be a fractional increase in people's awareness just by seeing the view that you've seen. The Earth is covered by the atmosphere, which is pretty analogous to the size of the skin of an apple on an apple, which is pretty darn thin, right? And even at these high altitude balloon altitudes, you'll be basically outside of that, out of that realm just about, and be able to perceive what that's like. And that just in itself, not to mention the curvature of the blackness of the sky, will give a very strong sense of sort of the bigger picture, and will help people imagine that as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mike, and what is very striking is the contrast between this blue color and this live color of the Earth, this beautifulness of the Earth, and the blackness of the sky. It looks, this is what is, it's a kind of paradox, because the Earth is a beautiful object, but it appears unique. It seems to be just alone in the whole universe, because we don't see anything else. Maybe, of course, the moon or the sun on the side, but the contrast between the blue color of the main color, which is the blue of the ocean and the atmosphere, sometimes the deserts, the white of the Himalayas, but those vivid colors contrast with the deep blackness above this very thin layer that Mike was mentioning. This contrast is visible from 40-kilometer altitude, and that's enough to trigger some personal thinking. I mean, it's enough to make people think. maybe not as much like Mike says. It is not to the degree of the orbital velocity that makes you see the change and go over every orbit and see the change when you stay several months of the seasons, like Ron said. But it's enough to start a thinking process that you wouldn't have just by staying at lower altitudes.
Yeah, and I agree with Jean-François and Mike. You know, you're going to get an effect, and you know what the degree of that effect is to be seen. One of the things to point out is you will be able to see the thinness of the atmosphere, and you will not be able to see it from 200 miles, but it will give you the sensation of how fragile the planet we live on is. And one thing I'd like to bring out is, you know, there's all these time-lapse videos that are making their way around the internet now that have become very popular, and they're all taken at night. And in those, you can see this band. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's green over the Earth, and it seems very, very thin. And you know, everybody comments, "Wow, look how thin the atmosphere is." That's striking, but in reality, that's not the atmosphere. That's an effect called air glow, and the atmosphere is considerably thinner than even that. It's a fraction of what you're seeing in those videos. And so it is really kind of scary to think about it, about how thin the atmosphere is, and that's the only thing that protects every living thing on Earth from the harshness of space and from death. It's all that keeps us alive. And so seeing that over a period of hours, I think would be very beneficial, and I think it would be perspective shifting, potentially.
I would like to add something. I was thinking as Ron was talking about those lights on the night pass. You know, I told you when you look at the Earth and space from illuminated cockpit, because you work, you read books, you read the checklist, it's black. But if you switch off all the lights in the cockpit, all the computer screens, when the sun and the moon are in the back, and you wait 10 minutes, then the blackness of the cosmos becomes white of stars, and they don't twinkle. They are very crisp. You can perceive very well their colors. And I'm thinking going just to 40-kilometer altitude with a balloon at night, I don't know if it is allowed, if it will be possible, but you could imagine that if you fly over the Earth where there is no lights underneath, like from a desert, and on the middle of the night with above the clouds, you will see stars like we see them from space when we do what it takes to see stars from space, and they will not twinkle. They will be crisp, colorful, and you will feel that we are not unique and isolated anymore. We are not alone in the universe. This is contrast. You know, when you see the Earth alone in the blackness of the sky, you think we are alone in the universe. And then when you switch off all the lights and you see all the stars, you say, we must not be alone in the universe. And that's something you can feel just with a balloon flight, probably.
Yeah, and the difference of what Jean-François is talking about is looking at the Earth against the blackness of space and looking at the Earth against infinity. So, and having this feeling that we're all, you know, riding through the universe because we are, and you really get that sensation when you can see the Earth against the backdrop of the Milky Way and all the stars, like Jean-François is talking about. It really is a striking difference.
So I have a last question that is more personally, you personally. You're all professional astronauts, and we know that professional astronauts have a lot of work to do when they fly into space, before flying and during the flight. Also, your time is precious, so usually you don't get paid to look out the window so much, except if you have the post of photographer, I suppose. But I don't know if you had enough time. Maybe if you spend several months in orbit, you had more time. But for short duration missions, I've heard some astronauts say that it was a bit frustrating because they didn't have enough time to actually look out the window. So if you had the opportunity in a few years from now to fly with one of the suborbital spaceflight providers, or even with us on a balloon, would you take this opportunity to do it as a leisure trip instead of a professional one?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you know, in space, of course, we work and we take on the night, on the sleep time to play with weightlessness and to take pictures of each other and to look at the Earth. Maybe on the long duration flight, Mike and Ron can tell if they have some free time on weekends that we don't have on the shuttle flights. But for me, this is clear. Any opportunity to share this experience with other people, whether professionals or not professionals, and to live it again myself, I would take it if I was given this opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, for me, when people ask me what it was like to fly in space, and I think back to the experiences that that I was fortunate enough to live, it's almost like thinking about a dream that you had last night. You remember parts of it very vividly. It seems certainly that it happened. You have pictures and videos and all that, but you can't really connect with the experience once it's over. It's almost like being in a different sort of universe, and you have to go through a door. And once you go through that door, you can't really reach back and sample what's on the other side. And so to be able to go and do that, to walk through that door again, I do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I have to agree, you know, even being up on a space station for months on time, you know, every spare moment that I had, what little free time I had with my face plastered to a window looking at the Earth, and there is never enough time to do that. It never gets old, and it's just such a wonderful experience. So if given the opportunity to do that again, I would like my colleagues jump on it in a heartbeat.
Annelie, can I ask a question to my two friends?
Yes.
Because, you know, I had the opportunity to look at the Earth, but, you know, when you are on a short flight, you see always the same part of the Earth illuminated by the sun and the same part at nighttime. But when you fly 7 months, you have a chance to see at least, you have a chance to see several times the same places on Earth with all kind of illumination by the sun. So a question I would like to ask Mike and Ron is, from all their views they had of the Earth, with all seasons, all illuminations, night and days, if they have to tell which is the preferred view they have in their memory of the Earth, what would that be? It's a hard question, I know, because they all are.
Thanks a lot, Jean-François.
Let's say, I will ask you, if you have a chance to choose a spot that you can take some friends with you to show them from space, just for a few minutes, which spot would that be?
Well, despite the difficulty of the question, I actually have an answer, because for me, it's not just the view, but it was combined with a certain experience that was happening at the time. So the scene is that I was doing a test of a rescue backpack that we fly during on our backs during EVA. And the idea was that my partner, whose feet were attached to the foot restraint and the shuttle's robotic arm, was holding me, and at some point he was going to let me go, and I was going to deploy this pack and sort of fly in the payload bay, only we were pretty high above the payload bay. Well, we were also doing this as part of a project with the IMAX folks who were going to take some film, and we had to wait for certain lighting conditions. So the result was that we were in place with a few minutes to spare, and that time happened to be sort of as we were coming into morning sun over the Caribbean. And the attitude was such that I had a fantastic view of the Caribbean as we came up over the Yucatan Peninsula, sort of heading southwest to northeast. And I have to say that the colors of the Caribbean are unmatched anywhere else in the world. I mean, there's such a variety of blues and greens and the whites of the sand, and you know, you've got the surrounding landmass with green forest. It was quite spectacular. That would be my top 10 spot.
I understand the combination, the task and the view at the time. Yes.
So it's almost, well, I shouldn't say it's almost impossible, because I think I have one spot too in mind. But you know, looking at Israel and Egypt from space, they stand out really amazing. The Himalayas, there's so many beautiful spots. The Mediterranean with Corsica and Sardinia, they stand out like jewels in the ocean. But I agree with Mike. The Caribbean is just absolutely breathtaking. Just the neon green of it. And actually, at night, if you let like Jean-François said, if you let your eyes adjust in darkness, you could actually see this from during night. If, see the change, and it's almost like it's glowing, and the colors and everything. It is absolutely breathtaking. And if I had to pick one, it would have to be that. So
you like
Bahamas and all that.
You like islands, I see. So you have to go to French Polynesia now.
Perfect. Well, that gives me some pointers as to where to conduct our balloon flights. I guess it wouldn't be a bad place for us to live and work either. So yeah, I keep all of this in mind, and if we need astronauts to accompany our clients on our balloon flights, I'll for sure call you, as I know now that you'd love to go again. So.
Thank you, Annelie. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ron. It was very nice to talk to you and share experience. I hope
it's good seeing you. Good seeing you, Billy Bob.
Yes, yes, Billy Bob. I almost wrote ESA astronaut Billy Bob, but I see you in real soon. Ciao.
Ciao, Jean-François.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I'll send you the link to the broadcast, to the recording of the broadcast. I'll put it on our YouTube channel, and we can relive this experience. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Annelie. That was
Thanks, Annelie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.